What if I told you that acting more like a woman could be your secret weapon to attracting more women? The thing is that men and women play the dating game in the same arena, but on totally different sides of the field. And understanding some of the female playbook could be the game changer that you're missing. So in this video, I want to talk about some of the traits that a lot of guys overlook while banging their head against the wall, wondering why they aren't getting anywhere with women. And by embracing some of the feminine perspective, you can actually give your masculinity and attractiveness a massive boost that draws women in. And the best part is that it's actually pretty simple to do, and you can start implementing these ideas today. Now, when I was younger, say 18, 19, 20, I didn't understand the game of attraction at all. I just figured that the more I gave to a woman, the more I'd be in good standing with her and the more good things I would get in return. And this is typically how men think by default because our brains are just so logically based. It's also one of the things that leads to being perceived as a nice guy in a bad way, which is a very common pitfall for men struggling with dating. And back then, I didn't understand that the laws of attraction don't work like that at all, and that I was actually moving further away from my goal rather than toward it. That's not to say that the solution is to never give or do nice things for a woman, because that would be ridiculous as well. But what tends to happen to the typical nice guy is that they will lose themselves in the process of all their giving. Imagine if I kept giving money to all of my friends to help them out, but as I was doing this, I eventually lost sight of the fact that I ran out of money for myself. And this is the type of thing that happens when you give yourself away to a woman to the point where you lose sight of your own genuine desires and you overextend yourself. When you stop being true to what you really want just to make a woman happy or to impress her. Now, as I got older and more experienced, I started to realize this flaw in myself and figured that there had to be a better way. And if you pay close attention and observe the average woman's behavior, you will notice that they are typically much better than men at putting themselves first. For example, a lot of women won't hesitate to flake on a date if they don't want to go, and they won't continue a conversation if they're not interested. If you've been ghosted or flaked on at the last minute, you know exactly what I mean. And I've personally known women that have expressed they flaked on a guy just because they felt like hanging out with one of their girlfriends instead. One girl specifically told me this with zero hesitation and almost laughed about it, like, why wouldn't she do that? And some guys might hear that and get angry, like a woman is evil to do something like that or soulless. But in reality, guys could really learn a thing or two from that type of approach. I'm not encouraging being a flake or leading anyone on for attention or just being a garbage person in general. In fact, when it comes to dates or meeting up with someone, I'm personally very straightforward and simple with my approach. If I say I'm going to be there, I'm going to be there, or else I won't make plans otherwise. But what I am saying is that many guys out there suffering from the typical nice guy syndrome will develop a habit of putting others before themselves to the point where they end up unhappy and miserable because they never paid attention to their own wants and needs. They have this false belief that if they build up enough goodwill, the favor will be returned by the woman and their wants and needs will be met as a result. But things don't work like that, and you must learn how to navigate dynamics like this if you want to succeed in the modern dating scene. Women are often raised in a way to put themselves first, and we can see this resonate in society in general. Women are often told things like, you deserve a good man, girl, and you need to do what's best for you. Whereas men are often told things like, you need to be more chivalrous to get the girl and to prove your worth to her, and that a good man is often measured by what he gives or what he sacrifices. But in order to be at your strongest and your most capable, you have to emulate the priority that women generally put on themselves and learn to put yourself first. If you're a guy that has a desire to be giving and supportive, that's a great quality to have. You can still do so, because by putting yourself first, you will be in a better and more capable position to give to others. You can't give away what you don't have, and oftentimes the most frustrated men are those that are stuck in a loop of giving without receiving anything. And I don't mean sexually, although some of the guys out there are probably stuck in that loop too. But you should learn from the female psyche and understand that if you don't put yourself first, no one else is going to do it for you. And oftentimes you'll actually benefit others by doing so. The girl that flaked on that guy to hang out with her friend actually saved that man any further time or potential money because she clearly wasn't into him. What looked like a dirtbag move on the surface was actually beneficial to that man's life. It's a fine line, and it's not about becoming a selfish dickhead as much as it is about taking care of yourself and not seeking that external validation, or expecting a girl to return favors to you because all of the goodwill that you've built up in your mind. And by putting yourself first, it'll allow you to be a better man for others as well. But what if I told you there was another layer to this? And what if I told you that the next layer was one of the keys to creating sexual desire in the women that you really want? So from working with clients from a variety of backgrounds, I've noticed a lot of times the guys that are the most successful in life are the men that are having the hardest time with women these days. It's actually the proof that becoming a top earner or a top 1% man isn't enough to solve your girl problems all on their own, which is something that is commonly pushed. Because there's still a glaring weakness in your ability to understand how to create a huge level of attraction with a woman. And this is one of the biggest areas of confusion I see when clients come to me for help. And I have to ask you a question specifically. Have you ever felt like communicating with a woman or attracting her was like speaking a different language altogether? Because in the past, I definitely have. And I understand the frustration and confusion that comes with that feeling. As men, we typically approach the situation with logic and we speak logic, but frustration builds when the girl doesn't react the way we expect her to. However, if you step back and you observe the communication between women, they communicate in a common language with each other. They naturally engage each other's emotions and understand that it's a game of speaking to feelings rather than a logical problem to solve. And this is difficult for a lot of you successful guys to implement and practice because you're used to your logic being able to achieve your goals, because that's typically what's needed to succeed in most professions. The professional world typically rewards an approach that makes sense logically, and the less emotion you mix in, the better. For most jobs at least. There are certain careers like marketing and sales which require you to engage emotions, but jobs like a software engineer, an architect, or a data analyst benefit the most from logical problem solving. But I want you to picture if you were in a Spanish-speaking country and you only knew how to speak English. You might be able to get some progress here and there, but it would be a rough time overall. People might be able to understand some of your communication attempts based off expressions and mannerisms, and you may be able to get some of your basic requests met, but you wouldn't be able to create deeper connections with people, and you would generally feel lost and frustrated. Everything would just be very superficial if there was any connection at all, and the same thing is true for dating if you aren't skilled at engaging emotions with women. You'll just be stuck in this endless loop of doing what you think makes logical sense, losing the girl's interest, and then ending up online rubbing one out again because things failed with the girl. You have to learn the critical skill of speaking to the emotional side of the brain, and by doing so, you will open up a world of opportunities in all areas of your life, including this next one that women are extremely skilled in. And this one used to blow my mind when I was younger. It was something that I just couldn't wrap my head around at the time, but once again, as I became more experienced, I started to grasp it more and more. And it's important to understand that in general, women are very social creatures. It's pretty rare to meet women that are fine being total hermits. And it's not to say that they don't exist. I've definitely met some introverted homebody type of girls over time, but on average, most of them are very social. And even those homebody type of girls have friends ready to go out if they want to. It makes sense too, since historically women often relied on social bonds and community for survival and to raise children. That social aspect is just wired into them. And even the homebody types will sit there on their couch texting their friends all day. There's almost always some element of social outreach going on in their lives. Guys, on the other hand, though, are not usually like this. Once you get past college, guys can easily go months without hitting up a friend, or even longer in some cases. And this gets even worse when the average guy gets a girlfriend and abandons his friend circle altogether until they eventually break up, and then he's left alone trying to rebuild his social circle that he once had. Women, on the other hand, are much more resourceful when it comes to their social network. And what used to blow my mind when I was younger was that a girl could be in a relationship with a guy, spend all this time with him, and sometimes temporarily drift from her own friends for a while. But then as soon as they broke up on a Thursday, she was out at the club with 8 friends on a Friday. Meanwhile, the guy would be in isolation at home playing video games, crying in a bowl of Cheetos. Even if women start to drift from their friend group for a bit when they get a boyfriend, they generally check in and keep ties with their friends just enough to keep connection with the girls they know. And that allows them to be incredibly socially resourceful when they need it. And this extends into their life in general too, and not just in a relationship or after a breakup. Most women I know are doing something damn near every weekend. It's incredibly rare for me to find a woman who just sits at home for the weekend doing nothing and not talking to anyone. But guys will do it all the time and not reach out to their boys. If your average woman stays at home for the weekend, there's usually a reason behind it, like she's gonna clean up the house or rearrange the place or something, and even then she'll probably FaceTime 3 friends that day and text throughout the day. Your average guy though can easily go an entire weekend just sitting in the house watching YouTube videos and movies and playing video games. One of the most common questions that clients ask me is how to meet more people and become more social. And I've actually had a girl ask me the same thing, but the ratio is insanely skewed toward men. Men are usually the ones trying to figure out how to become more social or rebuild their social life after a breakup. One girl I know got dumped by her boyfriend in the last couple of years, and she was pretty tore up by it. But she was quickly off traveling and going to social events almost every single day within a couple of weeks. She was still going through the pain of the breakup, but she stayed socially active, and that allowed her to rebound much better than if she had just been isolated in her room all day. And that's not to say that there isn't value in alone time, especially after something like a breakup. There absolutely is, and every man should be able to be alone and be content. But men could really learn a thing or two from women's social abilities by prioritizing their own social lives to generate more opportunities, happiness, and solve a lot of their problems by aiming to be more socially resourceful instead of treating it as an afterthought or something that should just naturally happen on its own, because it won't. There's value in times of isolation, but ultimately we are social creatures and things start to get really weird when you're alone too much. You start to lose your social skills, or even worse, you morph into a troll on social media whose only goal in life is to win arguments that no one cares about. And understanding the power of a strong social life is a game changer. But there's another aspect that's equally important, yet often overlooked by the average man. And women have this down to a fine art. And it makes a massive difference if you take it seriously. Now, throughout my life, I was really close to my grandfather. He was a World War II veteran on the front lines, and he worked in the corporate world after the war, and he was very disciplined in all areas of his life. One of those areas where he was especially disciplined, though, was his appearance. His clothes were always tailored, his hair was always cut, he shaved every morning, and anytime he went to the bathroom, he'd make sure his hair was looking good and the collars on his shirt were straight, even when he was hanging out at home. He just carried the discipline of the military and his job into everyday life, and his presentation was always on point because he made it a habit. And this also influenced my grandmother to do the same because he led by example. She was always dressed nice every day, even for the most basic of events or running errands. And women in general understand this principle very well because they are often judged in society by their beauty. Women will sometimes BS this point and say that men pressure them to be beautiful. But in my experience, women are even more cutthroat and beauty focused with each other than men are. For example, if you have a female friend or a family member and you show her a photo of a girl you're dating, the first thing they'll usually say is something like, "Oh, she's pretty," or some other comment about her appearance. They rarely say something like, "Wow, I bet she has a great personality." And that's because the average woman is very looks focused, because that's just how we are as humans in general, but it's also what is typically beneficial for them. Looks maxing has just always been a thing for them. And one thing specifically I noticed over time is how the average girl's fashion sense is much better than the average man's. The average guy doesn't care about how he dresses, whereas the average woman will usually have some semblance of good style or what makes her look good. And women make this a staple in their daily interactions with each other. Girls will say things like, "Oh, that top's so cute, girl, where'd you get that? I love that outfit," and things like that. Whereas you'll rarely hear a dude ask another guy about clothing at all. And the solution isn't to tell your boy that his shirt looks cute and to go shopping together at the mall. But if you're not treating your appearance as a priority on a daily basis, then you're putting yourself at a massive disadvantage. And things like fashion and style are something that you can correct today, and they'll have a huge effect on your ability to attract women. Seriously, I cannot state this enough, and this is still such an overlooked factor that it blows my mind, honestly. And I've noticed a lot of men think that they already have this area figured out when they actually don't. It's a common blind spot. And you don't have to be some fashion icon. Simple style is often the best style for men, and it's one of the easiest ways to stand out because so many guys just get it wrong or they just don't care. And this is a huge mistake because improving your style is a major component in having a woman view you with sexual desire. It is a major detail that they hone in on, and it's critical to get this right so that you can present yourself in the best light and have multiple options with women. And women are very good at stacking the deck in their favor, including their looks, so why wouldn't you take every opportunity to do the same? And here's the thing, you're now aware of some of the biggest mistakes that men make with women, but there's still a critical one that most guys are overlooking, and it can completely destroy your dating success. So make sure to watch this video next, so you can avoid falling into this common trap that most men miss.